caught up on the Dallas Cowboys offseason with Jon Machota from the Athletic Cowboys Insider here, joining us on 105 through the fan. Morning, John.
Morning, boys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, how close was this team to actually losing out on Mike Zimmer?
I don't think it was really that close. To me, the Rex Ryan stuff seems more like it was leverage to be used to make sure that they got Mike Zimmer at whatever contract they wanted him at, which I'll be interested to find out what that is. But I don't think that there was ever anybody that they seriously considered over him. And when you saw the names that started to surface of who they were interviewing, I don't know, for me personally, the more I saw, the more I thought Mike Zimmer was the best one out of that group, at least would be the best fit for what this team has right now.
Is that a problem at all, do you think, John? Like you just mentioned there that you said you don't think they ever really considered anybody above Zimmer. Like is that an issue that they seem to, in a lot of these interview settings when jobs come open, that the Cowboys seem to default to, like, hey, we got something in mind and we're going to go through the interview process, kind of confirm our initial thought and go forward rather than doing sort of these exhaustive searches?
It could be. I think for me, it was more so they interviewed the obvious ones outside of, I would say, Mike Vrabel. And with Zimmer, I just think that the fit makes the most sense. Whereas what you just said really fits even better with their last defensive coordinator search. I mean, it was basically going to be Dan Quinn. And I think that got really good results. And so I do think you should cast a wide net if let's say you're in a different head coaching situation, maybe, like the Dan Quinn one was, where you're earlier in Mike McCarthy's tenure as head coach. But with this being his final year, there's a lot of changes that could happen in the offseason. I think you have to be really focused in on one name or two, because I don't think it's going to be a job for everyone. Frankly, I don't think that this was a good job for any first-time defensive coordinator, just because there's going to be a lot of pressure on that side. That's an area that came up short in the playoffs pretty big time. And there are a lot of pieces there. The expectations are going to be high, and that's, again, why I thought Zimmer would be a great fit for it.
Mike Zimmer, introductory press conference is at 2 o'clock today.
Yes, it is.
You know where you can hear that?
105 through the fan.
Right here on 105 through the fan. John, I'm curious for something. Every year, the last couple of years, the Cowboys have come out strong in combine. Like, they get to Indy, it usually starts at Senior Bowl, but they get to Indy and they usually have a big talking point, something that they're really driving home. Last year, it was obviously, hey, we want to run the ball more, limit turnovers. We're doing these offensive changes. The year before that, it sounded like there was a lot about like physicality and toughness and, hey, we can't get bullied the same way, and that those became the thrust of what they wanted to do. When we get to Indy here in a couple weeks, what do you think is going to be their big talking point of the offseason and saying, like, this is what we need to do? Do you think we've gotten any breadcrumbs yet as to what that focus is going to be for them this offseason?
I don't, but when you said talking point, the first thing I thought of was Jerry at the Senior Bowl saying on multiple occasions how they are hanging around the rim. And I was like, oh, yeah. Where did this one come from? Because, one, it's not anything I've ever heard. I mean, I don't really, 13 years of being around Jerry Jones, I can't think of him talking about basketball very much, let alone to constantly go back to that point in Mobile. So I thought that was interesting, and it made me wonder, I'm like, is this going to be something that they're saying a lot this offseason, that, they're so close that, they just got to keep everything together and just add some pieces and they can get over the top.
They're all in.
And then the all-in thing started coming out there too. And so I think that's probably more likely that they'll stick with that more. But you can say all in all you want. The actions will speak louder than words there. And let's be honest, it's pretty fascinating to look these last 4 years, just speaking about the NFC, before the playoffs even started, we could have went around the room and asked everybody, all right, which team do you think will get to the Super Bowl? And if you just pick the team that was clearly the most all-in throughout the season, not even up for debate, those are the last 4 teams that have made the Super Bowl in the NFC. It was Tampa Bay the year with Brady. Then you had the year with the Rams with Stafford, last year with the Eagles, and this year with the Niners. It's like it's been very clear the team that has made the Super Bowl from the NFC the last 4 years who was all in. And so you can say it, put it on T-shirts, put it on billboards outside the Star, but we'll know when we see it. We saw a little bit of it last year with some of the trades they made in March, but there has to be more than that.
Because like all in, so I think a lot of people means like free agents, but the Cowboys, it's completely possible that they're all in just means re-signing Lamb and Micah Deck, and that's all into them.
Absolutely. No, there's no question that to them, and when Jerry says it, first, when it comes to Jerry, you can never take it as like it's this, just this one-way highway. This is just where everything's going. There's always some exit ramps where he'll take the conversation somewhere else. So to your point, that second part of what you just said could totally be that. And I'm just sitting around here looking at 28 years since they've been to an NFC Championship game or been to a Super Bowl, and I'm thinking that's not going to be selling anything to fans, and that makes me wonder if are we going to get to training camp, and is the big thing going to be like, well, there wasn't a lot in free agency done. We didn't really like what was being offered out there. We didn't have a lot of the trade offers that we liked, like we got last year in Cooks and Gilmore. So the big change is going to be that Mike Zimmer is now calling the defense. Well, I mean, that's a start. That's definitely a change. He'll do things differently than Dan Quinn, but that's not nearly enough when you're saying all in.
No, and when you enter, because obviously that was something that wasn't even up to them. Like if Dan Quinn doesn't get a job, they're keeping things the same way. So it's a little bit of a convenient fallback. But when you get to this Mike Zimmer press conference today and get an opportunity to sit down there, what is the top question for you? What do you think is the thing that you're most interested to hear Zimmer speak on today? Is it going to be, scheme stuff? Is it going to be specifically his thoughts on Micah Parsons? What do you think is the biggest question that you want to hear Mike Zimmer answer today during the press conference?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because when they sent out that email, because I didn't know for sure if they'd do a press conference or it'd be one of those like,
right.
When they've done some hirings in the past where they just send you out some quotes and that's just all you're going to get. It's the off season, whatever. So when they sent that out, I immediately went into like my notes section in my phone and was like, all right, what are going to be the top things that you want to know, whatever. And the number one thing was, how are you going to use Micah Parsons? And when I say that, it's not just the, how you moving him around during the game, but I'm wondering, is there going to be possibly less plays for him earlier in the season because of what we've seen these 3 years of Micah being one of the best defenders in the league? It's tailed off towards the end of the season. How do you get it so that he's playing at his best, or at least close to it, in January? Because in a way, there's so many different pieces of this team, evident by how many All-Pro and Pro Bowlers they have that are good players. But I really feel if you got to break it down to one thing, a lot of people say, well, they'll go as Dak goes. I kind of think they go as Micah goes. And so if he can maximize Micah to be the best Micah that we've seen, if Micah's best season in the NFL is his fourth season after what he's done, the Cowboys would be fine. So to me, that's the number one thing.
Is Micah... I want to think of the right way to ask this. I think there's a sense from fans lately that, okay, Mike, why are you talking to Jordan Love? Why are you, praising opponents on your podcast? Why are you, talking about, well, we didn't have enough good players? Is there any sense, do you think, that this is at any sort of a teetering point for Micah Parsons in terms of his future and this marriage between him and the Cowboys? Or do you think that, hey, that's a little overblown? Ultimately, the likeliest scenario here is that he's here for the next decade.
That's the likeliest scenario, but I believe anytime you're a Dallas Cowboys team, and I say them because it has been so long since they've been to the NFC Championship game, and you perform like you did against that Packers team in the wild card round at home, I believe that everything should be questioned. That there shouldn't be anything you just sit back and go, oh, well, no, we're going to do that. We always do that. No. There's some issues here that need to be resolved that will have to be done inside the building. And I don't have the answers for that, obviously, or I would have a higher paying job than I do. But they have to figure that out, and that's the key thing. So for all of it, that deserves to be questioned. But I will say this about the Micah podcast thing, because I know that's a hot topic with like a lot of fans and stuff. And I get it, man. I'm 42, and so I'm getting into that part of my life where I don't understand it maybe as much as maybe the younger generation does. But there's also a part of me that sees how much money Tony Romo makes, how much money Troy Aikman makes, how much money Pat McAfee makes. And there's a part of you that you're like, if Micah starts that podcast when his career's over, not many people will really care. But you start it now, you don't know that he's not the next Pat McAfee and that he has a way more successful career off the football field financially than he does on it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but where we are in this day and age, social media, the internet, you just don't know that. So it's hard for me to sit there and say, you need to stop doing that. I understand that that's probably not great for team stuff and as it's going on in the season, but it's a tough thing to discuss because I can see both sides of it.
Jon Machota joined us here at 105 through the Fan. Is this a need draft or a best player available for them?
Going off of the Dallas Cowboys track record of drafting since I've covered the team, I don't think they should ever have a need draft for the rest of the franchises. However many, if the Cowboys are around for 1,000 more years, 2,000, they should never do a need draft ever again. I've never seen good results from one of them. And I mean, it goes well beyond my time covering the team, but I just, when they take what they think is the best player available at that time, it has been, I'm not saying it hits every time, but it hits way more than when they draft for need. And I just keep going back to being a guy from Detroit. I follow the Lions a lot. Just thinking if they would have taken Sam Laporta in that with that first round pick, obviously tight end was a need for them. They did it in the second round. How maybe this season's different. I don't know. It's only one player, but I know they like Sam Laporta, and it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but was that their biggest need at the time? No, it wasn't. But when they seem to draft best player available, the guy they like the most, things go well. So, and that's another thing. It's really easy for us to know. We know when those drafts are going on, what they're doing within the first couple of picks. Oh no, they're drafting to fill needs. No, they're drafting best player available. So yeah, to me, it's got to be best player available.
Do you think they still buy into the future on Mozzie Smith, or do you think there's a little sense of regret?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I could see there being there. I don't understand how you couldn't have at least a little bit of regret. Now, there can also be behind the scenes where they're like, yeah, we just didn't use him right, or he didn't. That whole first year for some guys, it's not. Every player doesn't make. Step in like Micah did, and it is tough in the NFL, and especially interior defensive linemen. A lot of times guys don't hit right away, and so because of that, I don't know that you should completely, slam the door on it. But and believe me, when I say this has nothing to do with the University of Michigan. I hate when people make it about where the player's from, but there are just some parts of it where you just are kind of like, yeah, this seems like Taco. And while the Taco Charlton, his years with the Cowboys started going on and on, you just kind of got the feeling like, well, this is never going to hit. I don't know if that's the case with Mozzie, but where it's at right now, there's no question that they can. I mean, there's no way they can sit there and say, oh, no, we got what we thought we would from him, taking him, in the first round.
Hey, John, we appreciate it, man. We will talk to you again before the start of free agency, I'm sure, draft, all that stuff.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, John, real quick, can you, during the press conference today, if I don't get an opportunity to, can you ask Mike Zimmer what it was like to play around 9 or to coach around 9 God?
Yeah, I knew where this was going. I was just wondering I wonder which path you were getting to this. Yes, I will definitely. That'll be number one on my list. I just bumped the mic question.
Perfect. Thanks, Johnny. Love you.